Story 1. When I was a kid, I was lucky enough to grow up in a big house. Toward the back end of the first floor, there was a side room that my siblings and I always referred to as the second living room, because that's pretty much what it was. It had an old recliner, a modest table, and a medium-sized couch. We hardly ever went in there. One morning, I woke up feeling sick. I told my mom, and she said I could stay home from school. My siblings had to go to class, and my parents both had work, so I was going to be alone in the house. I lounged in bed for a few hours until about 10:30 a.m. That's when I heard footsteps coming from downstairs. At first, I didn't think much of it. I assumed maybe my mom had left for work later than usual. I was hungry anyway, so I got up and went down to the kitchen. But just a few feet away from the kitchen entrance, I came face to face, not with my mom, but with a man. He was at least 6 feet tall, wearing torn, filthy clothes. I froze on the spot. For a few moments, though it felt like forever, we just stared at each other. He didn't say anything. No expression. Just stood there. Somehow, I snapped out of my daze and bolted upstairs into my room. Even though I didn't hear him chasing me, I slammed the door shut, locked it, and shoved a dresser in front of it just to be safe. I grabbed my phone, and instead of calling 911, I called my mom, screaming into the phone that someone was in the house and trying to kill me. She told me not to open the door for any reason and to call the police immediately. I did. About 15 minutes later, I watched through my bedroom window as the police finally arrived. When they went inside, I rushed downstairs to meet them. I told them everything. They searched the entire house, but didn't find anyone. No signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no damaged doors. My parents came home soon after and were furious that whoever it was had gotten away. I was angry too, but more than anything, I was just thankful I was still alive. The officers began packing up to leave. But just as one of the last cops was heading out, he noticed a Walmart bag poking out from underneath the couch, in that same unused side room. What they found next made all of us sick. Beneath the couch were piles of trash bags, rotting food at least a week old, and even some of our missing personal items, wipes, water bottles, and a bag filled with urine. That man, he'd been living under our couch. 4 weeks. I still don't understand how we didn't smell any of it, or how he managed to stay so silent that none of us noticed. Since then, we cleared out that room completely and converted it into a breakfast nook with wooden chairs, so no one can ever crawl inside furniture to live in our house again. I'm heading to college in a few months, and I can't wait to get away from this place. But I still think about it every time I wake up with a cough. Story 2. Even though it doesn't feel like it, this took place more than 10 years ago. I was in the last couple of years of high school, and that weekend, I was alone. My parents had gone out of town for a wedding and were staying at a hotel, and my brother worked the night shift back then. We lived in a major East Coast city, in a working-class neighborhood that was starting to go downhill. As a teenager, I leaned toward being a loner, not a loser or anything. I was a big guy with friends and even dated, but I've always been an introvert. So, I really valued the rare times I had the house to myself. That weekend, I was excited to enjoy my usual solo routine, play some PlayStation on the big screen, order some late-night food, and throw on some Dragon Ball Z. My plan was to fall asleep on the couch around 2 a.m. with my old dog Cecil by my side. Cecil was a beagle and had been part of our family for 8 years. He was mellow and quiet, more into napping and begging for snacks than barking. Unlike most beagles, he rarely howled. His favorite spot was curled up with his head on your lap. Anyway, around 1 a.m., I was down to my last slice of pizza and beginning to drift off on the couch when I heard a loud thump coming from the alley out back. It didn't raise any alarms. Anyone who's lived in the city knows nighttime noises are constant. Cecil lifted his head from my lap and the fur on his back stood straight up. He's always been a little jittery, so I reassured him and went back to relaxing. But not 2 minutes later, another bang. Then Cecil did something I'd never seen before. He shot off the couch and bolted toward the basement door, barking and growling like a dog twice his size. The intensity in his eyes reminded me of Police K9's. I'd never seen him act like that. It made my heart race. Over his barking, I could now clearly hear it. Someone was pounding persistently on the basement door. This particular door led to the alley and was rarely used. It was old, rusted, and made a ton of noise just to open. That's when it hit me. Someone was trying to break in. For those who haven't lived in sketchy neighborhoods, here's a rule of thumb. If someone tries a door, finds it locked, and leaves, they just wanted your stuff. But if they keep trying even after finding it locked, they want you. I dashed upstairs to grab the wooden baseball that I kept under my bed. Probably should have called someone or gotten out, but I was a teenage tough guy with nowhere to go. I started heading back down. Cecil flew past me again, charging into the basement like he was half his age. Then, I heard a voice. A man's voice. He said, "Oh," and just like that, the banging stopped. I didn't call the cops. I didn't call anyone. Probably one of the dumbest things I've ever done. I sat there the rest of the night, bat in hand, unable to sleep. My brother came home that morning, and I told him what happened. He went to check the basement door. When he gave it a tug, the whole thing came loose. It nearly fell off the frame. That man had been one push away from getting inside. I'm pretty sure that lazy fat old dog saved my life. When I tell this story, people say, that's just a dog doing what dogs do. But I know Cecil. He never barked like that. Never moved like that. It was like he knew what was going to happen. Like he knew the door was about to give in. A few years later, we had to put him down. He'd lost his energy and just didn't want to live anymore. Before the vet gave the shot, I had a moment alone with him. I thanked him, one last time, for being my friend, and for saving my life. I'm a grown man now. I've got a wife and kids. And I'm convinced, none of that would have ever happened without Cecil. Story 3. I was about 13 years old when this happened. I still live in the same house, and to this day, I have no idea what I experienced. It had just started storming, and since we live in Tornado Alley, I'd gotten used to sleeping in my dad's room downstairs whenever there was a bad forecast. I'm a heavy sleeper, so I figured it was safer. It was around 12:43 a.m. I was lying in bed, watching YouTube on my phone while rain hit the windows. That's when I heard the deep rumble of my dad's bass-heavy car pull into the driveway. We live in a small town, everybody knows everyone, and no one else had a car that sounded like his. I figured he must have gotten home early from work, so I grabbed my stuff and my dog, then sat at the edge of the bed, waiting for him to come in. After a couple minutes, nothing. So I walked over to the window facing the driveway. From there, you could see everything. There was no way a car could be parked out there and not be seen. But nothing. The driveway was empty. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe I'd just mistaken a car on the nearby highway. Plus, I remembered my dad saying he wouldn't be home until around 2 a.m. I sat back down, but that deep car bass never really faded. It still felt like it was right outside. It made me uneasy, but I tried to brush it off. After all, cars sometimes idle nearby. Then, a few minutes later, I heard my dad's cough, coming from the garage. Relieved for a moment, I figured he was finally home, until it hit me. I never heard the garage door open. I froze. I was too scared to go back to the window, so I just waited, hoping I was imagining things. The rain was pounding harder now, thunder shaking the walls and lightning flashing brighter. Then I heard it. My dad's voice, softly calling my name. Right then, I knew, whatever that was, it wasn't my father. There was something, or someone, inside the house. I couldn't move. I just stood there, listening. I turned to look at my dog. He was staring at me with a confused expression, like he hadn't heard anything at all. Slowly, I sat back down and lay as still and quiet as I possibly could, until I eventually drifted off. When I woke up at 4 a.m., I immediately ran to the window. My dad's car was in the driveway. I bolted upstairs and told him everything. I don't really believe in ghosts or the supernatural, but I know something called my name that night, and it wasn't him. Sometimes I think about what might have happened if I'd gone upstairs, if I'd followed that voice. We still don't know what really happened that night. But ever since, I haven't felt truly comfortable in this house.